I'm going to talk about quadrilaterals today. A quadrilateral is just a shape with four sides. There's different types of quadrilaterals, and in class we went through the different types. So this is just a quadrilateral that doesn't fit into any specific category. It just has four sides and four angles, so it's a quadrilateral. Now, as a specific type of quadrilateral is called a parallelogram. That's because these two sides, these opposite sides, are parallel, and these opposite sides are parallel. That's why it's called a parallelogram. It has two sets of parallel sides. So, and the sides are congruent. And we know that they're congruent, that these two opposite sides are congruent because it has one tick mark. That means they're the same. And then this has two tick marks, and this has two tick marks, so these are the same, but these adjacent ones here are not the same. And they don't need to be a parallelogram. We just care that the opposite sides are congruent, they're the same length, and they're parallel. So that's a parallelogram. Now, a special type of parallelogram is called a rectangle. It's just a parallelogram that has four right angles. Doesn't matter if the sides are the same. Well, the opposite sides, of course, need to be the same because it's a parallelogram. But these adjacent sides don't need to be the same. Four right angles and four pairs of perpendicular sides. Well, that basically means the same thing. These two sides are perpendicular. They make a right angle. And these do, and these do, and these do. So basically a rectangle is a parallelogram. It's a type of parallelogram with four right angles. Now, a rhombus is a type of parallelogram also, but we don't care about the angles. What we care about is the sides. All four sides are the same. Now, so look at the rectangle versus the rhombus. Both of these are special types of parallelograms. This one has all equal angles, all right angles, and this one has all equal sides. Equal angles, equal sides. Okay? Now there's something that overlaps both of these that is both a rectangle and a rhombus and a parallelogram and a quadrilateral. That's a square. It falls under all of these categories, but it's very, very specific. It has four sides like a quadrilateral. It has two sets of parallel sides, and it has congruent side or opposite sides that are congruent, so it's a parallelogram. It has four right angles, so it's a rectangle, and it has four equal sides, so it's a rhombus also. So a square is a quadrilateral, parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, and square. It has four congruent, so a square is a parallelogram with four congruent sides and four right angles. A trapezoid does not fall under any of these categories except quadrilateral and trapezoid. It is not a parallelogram because a trapezoid has only two sides that are parallel, only one pair of parallel sides. The parallelogram has two sets of parallel sides. Trapezoid has one. Now, if I were going to take a look at, if I were going to follow this line and just extend it, they would eventually cross. And parallel lines never cross, no matter how far you extend them. You could extend them forever and they would never cross. That's what makes them parallel. So trapezoid only has one set of parallel sides, one pair of parallel sides. It's a quadrilateral and a trapezoid. It's not a parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, or square. It has its own special category. Okay, so here's a little Venn diagram that we did in class. You'll notice that there's this big rectangle here that represents all the quadrilaterals on, and inside it has two circles, parallelograms and trapezoids. Parallelograms have two parallel sides. Trapezoid has one set of parallel sides, two sets of parallel sides for the parallelogram. Okay, so out here you see these just random wonky quadrilaterals. They have four sides, so they're quadrilaterals, but they don't have a special name as far as what we've gone over in class. Trapezoids, you'll see, have no subcategories. There's just trapezoids, and then that's it. There's the kind that has one right angle. There's the kind that doesn't have one right angle, but they have one set of parallel sides. And that's what makes it a trapezoid. Within the parallelogram, so I see a couple parallelograms here. The opposite sides are congruent and parallel. And inside of the parallelograms, we have rhombuses and rectangles. Rhombuses have all four sides the same, and rectangles have four right angles. And then you'll notice this Venn diagram has some overlap here. A square is the only thing that is both a rectangle and a rhombus. It's rectangle and a rhombus because it has four congruent sides and four right angles. Okay, so it's a rhombus, a rectangle, a parallelogram, and a quadrilateral, but not a trapezoid, because trapezoid's over here. So this Venn diagram is really helpful in illustrating all of the overlap, because on your homework you have to figure out what category each quadrilateral falls into. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of problems. We have this quadrilateral here. Now we need to go through each one of these categories and see if it falls in that category. So this has four sides. So is it a quadrilateral? Yes, it is. Quadrilateral. Is it a parallelogram? Well, these opposite sides are parallel and congruent. These opposite sides are parallel and congruent. So I'm going to say yes, it's a parallelogram. Now, is it a rectangle? Well, it's a quadrilateral with four right angles, so I'm going to say yes, rectangle. Now, is it a rhombus? Now, a rhombus has four equal sides, and I don't see that here because this side's different than this side, so it is not a rhombus. Is it a square? Once again, no equal sides, or well, the opposite sides are equal, but all four sides are not equal. They're not congruent, so this is not a square. Now, if I know it's not a rhombus, I don't even need to check if it's a square, because a square is a type of rhombus. And if I know it's not a rhombus, that means it's not in this circle. So it means that it's not going to be anything that's in this circle, including squares. So is it a trapezoid? Well, a trapezoid has one set of parallel sides, and this has two sets of parallel sides, so it's not a trapezoid. So my answer to this would be quadrilateral, parallelogram, and rectangle. So let me look at the next one. Now, here's another, this is a four-sided shape, so it is a quadrilateral. Is it a parallelogram? Well, a parallelogram has four sets, or it has, two sets of parallel sides, and this only has one, the top and bottom. These two sides, if I were to extend them, they would cross. It's not a parallelogram. Now, is this a rectangle? Well, a rectangle has four right angles. This has no right angles. It's not a rectangle. And you know what? If I know that a rectangle is a type of parallelogram, if it's not a parallelogram, there's no way it could be a rectangle. Or a rhombus, either. Or a square. Rhombus, well, we know it's not a rhombus or square because it's not a parallelogram, so it can't be any of these three. But I'll just go through it anyway. Rhombus needs to have four equal sides. This only has two equal sides. Square needs to have four right angles. This does not have four right angles. It needs to have four equal sides. It does not have four equal sides, so it's definitely not a square. Trapezoid has it has one pair of parallel sides, opposite sides, and that's it. The other two should not be parallel, and that is exactly the case here. So it is a trapezoid. It's a quadrilateral and a trapezoid. So this is how you'll do your homework. You'll just go through all these and see which ones apply. Remember, if it's not a parallelogram, it's not going to be a rectangle, rhombus, or square. And you can see that from this picture here. It's not a parallelogram. It's not going to be anything inside of this circle. It's going to be either here, trapezoid, or just a plain old quadrilateral. That's not a trapezoid. If it's a rectangle and a rhombus, it's going to be a square as well because there's overlap here. Anything that is a rectangle and a rhombus is a square. Okay. And that's it.